Right, so joining her on stage as well is Mr. Wilson Erumebor. He is the senior economist and manager at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Please let's encourage him.
Our first question will be pretty, a bit generic, but I'll probably get a few of us to attempt it. Given the current economic environment, what factors make real estate a timeless asset class for institutional investors, despite the growing appeal of fixed income investments?
Thank you so much for the invitation to Think Meet. Thank you for the invitation and also all protocols observed. If you look at GDP figures and the breakdown of Nigeria's GDP, particularly in 2023, you would see that real estate, the value there, the monetary contribution was 10.5 trillion naira. Now, when you adjust that for inflation, so we're looking at real GDP now, that figure drops significantly to 4.3 trillion, and it speaks to the point that real estate, catches up with inflation because, of course, your building materials and all of that, adjust as prices generally increases. So 4.3 trillion real contribution of real estate. If you do it as a percentage of Nigeria's GDP, it's 4.6%, which is really small. And it tells you that there is a lot of potential that is still untapped. So I always think of real estate as Nigeria itself. We talk about Nigeria's economy being untapped potential. That's the same story of real estate. Now, with 4.6% contribution, it's the lowest we've had since 1993. So in 1993, it was 2.6 or 2.7% contribution to GDP. After that, it rose. In the 2000s, it went to 7%, 8%. And so in the last couple of years, it's been dropping. In 2022, it was 5%. Now, 2023, it's 4.6%. So it tells you that real estate also, as much as it adjusts to the economic realities, inflation and all that, it is still prone to some of the challenges like, FX problems, interest rate itself, inflation, and then more importantly, government policies and regulation. So straight to your question, I would say that I think the key word there is timeless. Right now we're dealing with, we have a central bank that is saying the focus is inflation targeting. We're going to mop up excess liquidity, raising interest rates. There's an NPR meeting that would come up next week. Some people are thinking interest rate will still go up further. Many are predicting that there will be a hold on interest rate. But the key message here is that there is no way we can sustain and build a competitive Nigerian economy with interest rate at 25, 26%. I'm talking about yields on fixed income, 1 year investment. And then when you go to lending rates, you're talking about 30% plus 32% and thereabout. So the key message here is that interest rates will not always be this high. 2 years ago, it wasn't this high. So it then means that real estate is something that, we can look up to. As long as, from a broad macroeconomics perspective, we start to think of how to address those issues that are cost drivers, whether it's in terms of FX, whether it's in terms of procuring raw materials locally, and many other challenges that we face. So let me stop here for now.
Okay. All right, that was spot on. I could see people nodding and jotting down stuff. So it means we're communicating pretty solid. Back to the inflation, and I would like that you, Wilson, talk about that because it's sort of like in your area. How effective do you think real estate is as a hedge, towards against inflation? How do you compare real estate as compared to other, asset class like bonds and commodities? How do you assess it?
Yeah, so one thing with hard assets is that they tend to move along with prices, like just Dr. Abiodun mentioned. Yeah. Sorry, I'm used to calling everyone doctor because I'm from also the academic field. But I think hard assets tend to move along with, prices. If inflation right now, just yesterday, the NBS released that inflation is 32%. It's dropped from 33.4% a month before to 32% in August. I don't think many of us would agree with that because prices are still going up regularly, and these figures, some people would contest that. But one thing about inflation is that inflation rate is that even if inflation drops to 32% from 33% a month before, that figure doesn't mean that prices have dropped. It just means that the rate at which price increased is what dropped. So 2 months ago, price increased by 33%. Last month, it increased by 32%. So that's the inflation rate, 32%. So you may not expect that price of goods has dropped by 32%. No, it just means that the rate of increase is what has slowed. I think that's one of the misconceptions we have. So when we see those figures, 32% inflation rate is still, in fact, it's hyperinflation, in this era that we live in. And so what real estate does is, as prices keep going up, you need to buy your raw materials, you need to buy your cement, you need to buy all of the other inputs, your rod, and all of that. And those things also adjust, and it's also part of the contribution to the general inflation. And so the value of real estate increases as well. And it's not just the cost, of whether the amount the property is sold for that also increases, also the additional income that comes with it, whether we're talking about rent, lease, sales, and what have you. So that's why I like the word that you use, timeless, that it's something that will always be there, always adjust to inflation. And in fact, when the economy stabilizes, perhaps maybe next year, when we at least have some stability with fuel price and all that, in fact, I think that more of these prices will increase, particularly for real estate, because again, we're dealing with, purchasing power would then improve, and people can then demand for even more properties, and that would also drive prices of real assets like real estate. So I think that's how it then compares. For yields and bonds, to be honest, it's not going to be this high for too long. By next year, I'm very sure the CBN will start, the Monetary Policy Committee will start reducing rates. And then, so yields would then effectively drop. What I see for the real estate is that demand will continue to increase. And I think one aspect, that is very critical is the diaspora market. As much as we talk about, JACPA, there are lots of benefits that can come from there. And I have, been part of that. In the last, just a few years ago, I was in a session like this, speaking in Westminster in London, where I've been living in the last 3 years. And in that conference, it was organized by some Nigerian real estate developers. And in fact, after that session, we had lots of Nigerians in the diaspora, looking for opportunities to invest in properties here in Nigeria. And I think those, it can be more structured, and not just about real estate, even things like pensions. I have lots of friends, lots of colleagues who are thinking of, look, they know they will not live here forever. Just a few months ago, or last month in August, thankfully I just left the UK, there was this riot, black people and people of other races, leave our country, so a lot of friends were calling and saying, look, it's dawning on us that we cannot be here forever. We have to start thinking of, having something back home. And I think, you want their numbers? Yeah. So I think if we have structured plans for them, and it doesn't have to be outright sale, what is it, monthly contributions or something like that, that can target that particular market. I think that's one key opportunity that many Nigerian real estate firms need to start thinking of. Yeah, thank you.